with Beard! Hey, podcast kittens, it's Cathy Cat
and Ladybeard coming at you with another quarterly report delivering installment of Cat with Beard! Tell you what, I need a haircut. This hair is too flippin' long. Look how long it is.
It's beautiful. I'm very jealous
Thank
of
you.
it.
You're
I'm
very
just trying
kind.
to grow
but
mine out right now.
It's really impractically long at the moment. It's every time I move my head, I feel it go flapping around.
I realized that when my hair was too long, that when I was turning over while sleeping, I was like pulling my old hair, and it annoyed me after a while.
It's
so
stuck
many
behind
times.
my back when I roll over. My God, it wakes me up. Oh, mate.
Yeah, that's when I realized that it was too long. I'm a lot happier with my current length
I have to get a snippety snip.
All right, but talking about hair, here's some hairy weird rules in Japan.
Oh, pay attention to the hierarchy. Oh, don't get in a hairy situation. Oh, look out.
There
Etiquette.
we go.
We're talking about the unwritten rules of Japan.
There are a lot. And
God, that's the whole nation. It's just unwritten rules.
There's a lot of unwritten rules and a
dude.
lot of things not actually being said to your face.
bro.
And a lot of foreigners come to Japan thinking they did great. And then they wonder why the girl never calls them back.
Yep.
There's a lot of that. We've done plethora of videos about rules and unwritten rules, especially in dating and relationships. But let's just go into the basics. First, let's start you guys off gently for when you come to Japan, that you don't step in it all the time. Maybe just some of the time, but not all the time. Right?
You'll be forgiven every now and again. You won't be forgiven regularly.
There's such a thing as a gaijin card.
Oh, yeah, you gaijin card.
Gaijin card. You're a foreigner, which means gaijin. And you kind of get the out of jail for free card called the gaijin card from time to time.
Yeah.
But you don't always get it.
You don't always get it. If you've done something really weird and offensive, you don't get it. You lose that privilege.
Yes. Also, sometimes recently, there's so many tourists in Japan that are doing so many things wrong that even the polite, I'm not telling you off, Japanese people are starting to get a bit annoyed.
Yeah.
So let's tell you some basics for
right.
when you come to Japan. First of all, know your thank yous.
Oh, yeah.
Know
Say
your
thank you
pleases
very
and
much.
your
Yeah.
thank yous, but
It's important.
especially your thank you. That's a good one.
Very important.
That's just generally bring a good bag of common courtesy and your best behavior from your country. Anyways, no matter where you're going in the world. And then a big bag of being able to read the room.
Read the room. So let's explain. Japan is what's called a high context society. So communication happens in the space between the words as opposed to the words themselves.
Not direct. Indirect
It's
communication.
indirect. So as Westerners, we tend to be quite direct with our communication.
Yes.
Allegedly, you Germans are pretty direct.
There's a graph. Japan is like literally super, indirect.
Indirect,
And the
high
Germans,
context.
We're very direct.
Very
we
low
will tell
context.
you if you look fat in that dress.
That's
We're very
low
direct.
context. Would be called low context. Being direct, just telling people how it is.
There is no
Calling it how
reading
you see
between
it.
the lines. If we tell you smell, you probably need to take a shower.
Yeah, that's a rude thing to say to someone, telling them they smell. It's highly
I
offensive.
was surprised when I went to the UK. A lot of people said, "Oh, you're German. We have an image of you Germans being quite rude." And I'm like, "Why? I've never heard about that." And they say, "Well, some Germans are so direct that they have no filter." So I learned pretty quickly to work on my filter.
That's good.
generally-
You're very polite and pleasant at all times in my experience.
Thank you. I
Cathy
try
Cat.
to be. I really try to work at that.
But yeah, Japan, being direct is frowned upon. You do not, when you communicate, if you have a point you're trying to make, you do not just say it directly. So if I want to tell Cathy, I think next time you should not wear these in your hair, I need to say something along the lines of, you know what? This new camera that we have gets very good colors. And now she's supposed to infer and figure it out.
And then literally think 10 steps
This
ahead.
color's not bright enough to be picked up on the camera, so I need to change the color. She's got to figure all that out herself.
Very, very indirect. Sometimes really literally beating around the bush. Sometimes also what you have to do almost, it borders sometimes, this is the advanced level, it borders sometimes on reading minds. That one person is like so roundabout that you're supposed to realize, or you're supposed to think, okay, if I say this, then they will think that.
Yeah.
So I already have to think 3 steps in advance and say this so they will not think that, so they will then be able to do it like that. It's a bit complicated.
It's like game theory, isn't it? It's like a culture of game theory. You have to constantly be thinking about this. if I want Cathy to pass me a water, I can't just say, "Can you pass me that water, please?" I have to be like, the decor in this room is nice. Now she's supposed to realize that my neck's like this, so my throat must be dry, so she should offer me water. I should say, no, I don't need any water, that's absurd. And she should say, no, I'm certain you have a dry throat and you would definitely benefit from this water, and it would be my privilege for the next 10 generations to give you water. And I have to say, but no, I couldn't possibly burden you with such a horrendous activity. Finally, she'll force me to, and I need to thank her and tell her that now I'm indebted for the rest of my life to her.
That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but there are things like that.
Actually, that's kind of how it goes. Kind of the concept.
One big thing to explain it is that in Western societies, we're very much focused on the individual kind of society. Yeah. I scream louder, I get what I want. I want this, I get it, no matter what other people and how it will affect other people. While in Japanese society, it's a group mentality.
Yeah.
So instead of putting yourself first, you try to put yourself lower or even last in order to make the group happy. Yeah. So that's a big difference, because a lot of people say, why should I put myself last? I'll just end up last. That's stupid. But in Japanese society, someone else will notice that you did that, and then they'll reward you by putting themselves last. And it's like a give and take more than I take what I want kind of society.
And I think as well in Western culture, we value words like honesty and transparency. Whereas in Japan, they value harmony. So
harmony.
You could be as upset as you want on the inside as long as everyone's smiling on the outside and we're all playing the game.
Trying to. You can make a lot of, I think that's also a very female trait, that a lot of women will make themselves miserable for the sake of others. And they will do a lot of things for the sake of others because that's what a good woman does, or what you're supposed to do to protect the group harmony. There's a lot of psychological pressure on people a lot as well.
A lot of getting scolded by your own people, scolded by your own family and whatnot, because that's what you're supposed to do to maintain the harmony. You're supposed to constantly apologize for your own people in order to make sure that make sure you've said sorry for your people for whatever they did or didn't do, and then everyone else is doing that for their people too, and now the harmony is maintained.
I mean, there's sometimes, for example, we're coming a lot into harmony and hierarchy, and there will be, if, for example, the lowest person in an office did a mess up, then they and maybe their superior who's supposed to advise them will then both have to apologize together. So again, you don't really want to mess up if that causes, your next superior to also have to apologize. You think a lot of the group harmony, and again, a lot of people, for example, don't take their holidays because, again, if they lose, then someone else in the office will have to take on their work, and you don't want to burden them. There's a lot of thinking of other people more than thinking of yourself. And if you, for example, go on a holiday, you also have to bring, for example, gifts. There's a big
you got to come
culture.
back with gifts.
Again, if you feel bad, if you then did take that daring holiday that you took and you put all that burden on your colleagues, then you should probably give all your colleagues a little gift to say, thanks for letting me go on that 2-day holiday. It was great. Here's lots of gifts. Don't be angry at me anymore, please.
So, have you gotten accustomed to the indirect communication and the unwritten rules of the country?
I've been very in tune. Sometimes I even get told I'm acting almost too Japanese. And I was mentioning that off camera earlier. There are two ways of going at it if you're a foreigner. You either very much Japanify yourself and try to do everything the right way, which works at some companies and sometimes you have to do at very, very traditional Japanese companies, or you roll with who you are as a foreigner and don't bend too much. There's two ways of approach. There's no right and no wrong way, but each of them has their, I'd say, like benefits.
Benefits and detractions. I mean, it seems to me like you have done actually a pretty remarkably good job of integrating into Japanese society and understanding all the rules and understanding how the game is played. I don't think I have very well.
But I think that also is what makes Ladybeard Ladybeard. I think
That's
you
right.
coming in here with, your loud voice and you're like, hey, how you doing? That kind of friendliness instead of like, sorry, hello, nice to meet you, like other bound. That wouldn't be Ladybeard, right?
Well, yeah, that's the whole appeal of Ladybeard, is living outside the norm set.
Yeah, and I think that is your strength.
Thank you.
We're both literally both ends of the spectrum, right? You're like the very like direct, loud, and yay, and here I do things, and sometimes you step into it, but it's fine. Well, I'm like very much the like, okay, like I'm trying to really assimilate with the culture quite a lot, and it's not a right and wrong. You don't have to like do it either or the other way. Like none of them's better or worse than the others. It just depends on what kind of your environment you're in.
This is why we make a good team.
Yeah, I think
Not the
so.
yin to the yang over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
we
good
have
job.
like the the Western approach and the very like trying to be Asian approach. And again, I will never be a Japanese person, right? So I cannot change that. I will never be perfect as such in a lot of ways of maybe picking up everything. And I haven't been raised here, so there's a lot of things I'll probably still put my foot into it if you think about it. I'll try to look out for it.
You accidentally put your foot in it. A lot in Japan, and for things that just it would never occur to you that it's a potential put your foot in at moment.
Yeah.
My first year here, I was backstage at TV or something, and I was there with my like TV agents and whatnot, my manager or something. We were talking about the girls in AKB48 for some reason, and I was like, yeah, this one, the thingamajig, that one, yeah, I like her, and I felt the room go. Just everyone got so tense. And I was thinking to myself, no. It turns, like, I think there must be something like that girl was, like, a different one is managed by one of these, and she had a fight with it. There'd be some nonsense. I asked my manager about it later, and she's like, oh, no, that's just an unusual choice for a favorite AKB girl.
Oh.
I was like, but everyone acted like I had just headbutted their mothers. Like, yeah, it was very strange. And I was like, what the
I think especially in the entertainment industry, hierarchy is on a whole new level that I hope that many people don't have to experience. I remember when I was part of a theater group and it was very hierarchical, which means the people who've been in there the longest and had the most experience, they had the longest lines, they had the most exposure, and they had like the most say. Well, the people who just joined that year had the least to say, had to prep all the items in the room for them, barely had any speaking part. And you like the lowest of the hierarchy, and you literally have to like please everyone else in the room because you just entered. And again, that brings us to the senior-junior relationship. That's very, very important in Japan. You can step your foot into it. You can't roll in with the same kind of like, hey guys, attitude as the higher people do. That is very, very complicated. But like I said, that you might not have to do that at all in your work. And if you're just coming here as a tourist, you'll never even notice.
So, as a tourist, because moving here to live here long term or work here is kind of a different beast that most people are likely not going to do. So tourism. How are we going to not completely ham it as tourists?
Okay, you're coming here to Japan for the very, very first time. Great, you're here. You're entering the country. You're getting all your things sorted. You made it through customs. You grabbed your luggage. You have come through. And the next thing you'll probably do is...
This is a forensic examination of arriving at the airport. You got off the plane. You walked to immigration. Your suitcase is in your hand.
And
Continue.
your next thing is you will probably leave by train.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a lot of rules around trains, especially if you come to the big cities, because it is so dense. So many people ride on the train. The trains will be very squished. People will be very stressed.
Yeah, it's the trains are kind of a touchy time, especially at the end of the day. Or either the extreme ends of the day. So your really early morning trains, or your rush hour trains, basically, your late night trains.
Oof, both of them. Yeah, and Japanese people are very polite, and they generally won't like tell you off, but you really don't want to annoy them so much. There's a lot of rules around train life. Step number 1. Line up.
Line up. Yep. Don't jump the line. Line up.
Just, there will always be a line. Just look on the floor. Yep. Japan is great with their train system. They have a line. You know exactly where the door is. You know exactly where to line up.
And sometimes, pardon me, you line up for the next train. So there's the line for this train here. And then if you're on the next train, there's one next to it. You're going to line up there. Then when these people get on their train, you'll all shuffle over.
That's for those who definitely want to sit down. Seats are another real big battle. Sometimes Japanese people will stop being polite when it's about seats on the train for long rides. But that's another topic.
A seat is a valuable commodity on the train.
So first of all, we line up. Then you manage to... Then the train arrives. let first people get out of the train. Common knowledge. Sometimes if people try to push in while people are still trying to get out, very annoying.
Bad plan. Doesn't work well.
The train only stops for a short amount of time, so you need to be efficient.
Yeah, this is something in Japan, it's not a case of we're going to stop at the station and when everyone's on and we're organized, that's when the train will leave.
Nope.
Wrong. There's a schedule. The train's at the station for 45 seconds. And at the end of that 45 seconds, the doors are closing and we're going. So we don't have time to faff around.
There's a couple of foreigners who missed their train because they just were like, let's put that suitcase on there. Let's put that. No, you have to be quick.
See you later.
Be efficient.
And
As a
when
German,
you're on the
I love
train,
that.
when you're on the train, you're definitely not going to talk on the phone.
Yeah. Let's say you enter the train and you have a backpack. Actually, good manners.
Take that bad boy
Is
off.
put the backpack down.
Yeah.
Maybe put it in front of you or put it up on
The rack.
the rack up there, but you're not supposed to just have it on your back because you will,
Smacking
if the train
people.
gets, you will smack people.
I've done that. Almost had a fight.
Yep, people can get really annoyed at that
Yeah.
because you don't know if your
Smacking
backpack is
people.
bumping into people.
It probably is. You don't know, but it likely is.
It likely is. So I can really annoy people if you don't take your backpack down.
You're going to stay off the phone, and I've seen Japanese people get verbally angry with a phone talker on the train.
Oh, okay.
My first year, my first manager, she answered the phone on the train, and an old man next to her went bananas because he was like, I have a pacemaker, and the signal from your phone is going to, like, give me an irregular heartbeat. Yeah. So do not talk on the... Now, this is something interesting I'd like to clarify. In other Asian environments, I used to live in Hong Kong, In Hong Kong, people talk on the phone on the train willy-nilly. Loud, shouting even. No one cares. But in Hong Kong, you cannot eat on the train. Eat on the train, everyone's upset. In Japan, you can eat on the train.
You can
but
eat on the
you
train.
cannot talk. If you talk on the phone, big problem.
But generally, if it's like a normal train that gets crowded with people, that's a nuance that might be hard for people to understand. But if it's like a normal train that's kind of crowded, you're allowed to like snack little things, but you're not allowed to bring out like your full
Pop out your
smelly
bento.
food because then
Yeah.
a lot of people will smell that, they
upset.
get hungry, or it makes them sick because the train is so squished. But you can, for example, have a full train lunch pack, which is called a ikiben, on things where you can actually sit down and you have a seat like the Shinkansen, or maybe like green car, they call it. It's like a business first class kind of system. When you sit down, you have your own little table. You're very welcome to eat on the train and maybe even have a drink because you're allowed to have alcohol on the train in
You
Japan.
are allowed to drink your alcohol on the train. So sometimes you see, especially late at night, people have had a few too many of the beers before the train and on the train. And sometimes after there's at the stations, there are all these signs which have a picture of a dude
drunk
in a
man.
suit who's had a few too many drinks. His tie is around his head and he's falling onto the track.
Like, don't be too
and
drunk
everyone's
on
like,
the station, please.
whoa! Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of please don't be too drunk at the station. A lot of problems and accidents apparently happen with drunk people at the station, but it's still illegal. You're allowed to drink at the station. You're allowed to drink on the train.
It's always dudes who've gotten off work and are now plastered. You see, it's something you'll get off at the station. There's just a dude lying on the ground. And you're like, all right, well,
Yep.
good luck to you.
Happened a lot of times, and it will keep happening, and probably a lot of times, even today.
All right.
I think a lot of things for on the train, the rules are so strict because it is so many people in a very tight space.
very
You are
tiny space.
in people's like comfort zone. You're sometimes even squished against people, so you want to minimize yourself as much as possible. And then once you can get out of the train, you can do whatever you want to do. But like on the train, you try to be quiet. You try to just keep to yourself. That's why everyone is also on their phones quite a lot. You're just trying to be in your own little world. And it's like, okay, I just got to get out of this train and then we're sorted.
I mean, it's not a comfortable environment. It's especially in the extreme weather months in the summer or the winter because in the winter they'll pump up the heating in the train, in the summer they'll pump up the cooling in the train. So you're always going from hot to cold as you get in and out of the train. You're packed in with everybody like this, and everyone's just standing there going, "Let's just get through this. Let's just get through this." So if you're causing a disturbance in that environment, you're not going to be popular.
Yeah, strong smells are a no.
Oh, mate.
Oh gosh, guys, with your strong cologne, Westerners, you literally, you're in a train with 100 people and you know where the foreigner is just by their smell.
Yeah.
Try not to have too strong a smell. Not even of deodorant. Just don't smell. Smell neutrally of soap.
What you can do on the train is go to sleep.
Yeah, you can totally have a nap.
In any position somehow.
count
Sitting down,
the napping.
standing up with leaning against a thing. Sometimes you see people sit on the ground and go to sleep.
Some people will calculate that nap in because they're just working so hard
Yeah,
that they're
that's
like,
right.
okay, I need those half an hour on the train. I need that. That's the only situation sometimes when people in Japan will get rude. Sometimes there's a bit of a battle for seats because people are just, they have such long commutes into Tokyo. or generally around Tokyo as well, that some people will like they'll be passive aggressive trying to snatch a seat. Yeah. Wow, there's a whole story on that. Restaurants and dining. Let's move away from trains. Restaurants and dining. Again, line up.
Line up. Oh, you'll know more about this than me. What do you reckon?
Line up. Then depends on, are you going there with a lot of people? Are you going if you go into a ramen place, you're not supposed to linger around a ramen place. I got told off for that by my friends.
Linger around. You meant to eat your ramen and get out.
You're supposed to eat your ramen and get out, especially if you see people are waiting behind you. No matter what restaurant it actually is. If you see there's a huge line,
you should not hang out.
Get out.
You should get
Eat
out of
and
there.
get out. Like, they're all waiting. But also another one is if you go for like a big...
Sorry.
Sorry.
To interrupt. And you also, when you're eating your ramen, you're supposed to not talk to the person next to you, right? You're meant to just be alone with your ramen and get it done and leave.
You don't generally talk with strangers in Japan anyways. There's a lot of like people get a little bit shocked if you randomly speak to them. I had that a couple of times. Like I came, from Germany. I'm like, oh hey, this looks great. Some people don't like it that much. Some people get a bit shocked.
If you're there with your mate, are you allowed to talk?
You're allowed to talk with your mate.
That's okay. All right. 'Cause sometimes the ramen place has the divider.
Oh yeah, but some ramen places are very strict. But I think that's been changing over the years as well. But
I guess if you go to a divider ramen place, you're specifically there to be alone. So
I mean, there is some places where you can just then take the divider down if you are with people.
all right.
But there's a lot of like places that are pretty much like supposed to be for people who actually don't really want to interact at all with people around them.
There's a lot of that in Japan. It's, at times an antisocial society.
Ichiran is like a place where literally there will be a divider between every person, and you don't even have to talk with any of the staff members. You have like a little sheet where you just write down how the way you want your ramen. You put that down. You don't say a word. The staff is like behind a little curtain. Like if they're standing up, you can't see them. You only hear their voice. They will take your order like on the piece of paper, and then they'll bring it to you. They will talk, but you don't have to say a single word to them. And even if you want to have seconds, there's another sheet that you can fill out. You don't have to speak with them. So if you want to be very socially not interacting with anyone at all, Ichiran is your place to go.
What about use of your sticks of chop?
Sticks of chopsticks. There's a lot of rules about how to handle chopsticks. I mean, a lot of people know the general that if it's a bowl of rice, you're not supposed to stick your chopsticks into it because that's usually used for other reasons. But you're also not supposed to pass food from chopstick to chopstick.
That's right.
That's a big one.
That's considered rude.
Yeah. There is also rules of like if there's something stuck on your chopstick, how to get that off. You're not supposed to point at people with your chopsticks.
Yeah, that's rude.
You're not supposed to like hover them around too much. There's a
Definitely don't play the drums on the table with your chopsticks.
Don't play the drums on the
badly.
table. Don't use it randomly as a hair accessory, even though you thought that looked nice.
If you want to,
don't stab it into your neighbor's ear.
If you're going to put your chopsticks down, you put them lying on top of your bowl. You definitely don't stab them into your rice. You put them lying on top of your bowl.
Stab them into the rice.
What's this drippy drip one here? If you have some kind of soup or watery substance that you're eating from, make sure your drips are all taken off before your chopsticks come up to your mouth. You don't want to be dripping on your way up. That's impolite.
Yes, namida hashi, which means the crying. Don't make the chopsticks cry.
Chopsticks cry.
You're also not supposed to just randomly stab items on your chopsticks and eat it as if it was like a skewer.
Yeah,
that's also a bit bad.
And also there are rules about if you got to mix things up, don't clickety-clang your chopsticks around your bowl.
Oh, yeah, and you're also not supposed to pull the bowl closer to you with your chopsticks. But let's be honest, people are not like on some of those things, people are not going to judge you as much, but people will stand up and be shocked if you pass things from chopstick to chopsticks. Don't do that. It has a quite negative connotation because if a family member or if someone dies in Japan, cremation is a thing. And then usually the remnants, which will be bones that might not completely have been cremated, will be passed to the family by a thing that resembles chopsticks. It's like a metal thing. So it's like they pass the bones and then you receive the bones and put that into the urn. People don't really want to be reminded of that. So that's actually one of the two rules. They're not stabbing it into the rice and the passing things from chopstick to chopsticks. Those two rules I generally would like you to remember. The other ones are not as bad, but those two are just like, it makes people like cringe in a very bad way.
It's very bad.
Dude.
All right. All right. Very good. Now, language. Listen. Oh, mate.
Okay.
Language.
Yeah. We mentioned this before, but there are like 3 polite languages in Japanese. The way you talk with mates, the way you talk with people who you don't know, who are like, you give some respect, and then the way you talk with gods or customers. We mentioned Keigo before. It's a whole new language, and that's pretty much how the lifestyle also works quite a lot. If you greet someone, you don't do the tachi-tachi. You don't touch people when you greet them. You don't hug people when you greet them.
Even a handshake is kind of a bit too much a lot of the time.
Yeah, a lot of people, like, a lot of Japanese people who are accustomed to Westerners, they will love to give you a handshake. Some will be a bit shy to give you a handshake. Don't expect, like, a strong handshake. You don't get that in Japan anyways. All of the handshakes are going to be kind of nice and soft.
And people will ask, may I shake your hand? It won't be hi, my name is. People will ask, may I shake your hand, please?
Really? Or sometimes I had some Japanese people like reach out their hand because they're like, oh, you're a Westerner, which means you like this greeting.
Okay.
Generally, it's bowing. There's no touchy. We've done a couple of videos on Ask Japanese where we ask, can you randomly hug people in Japan now? People in Harajuku. And a lot of girls have said the hugging is only okay if it's not with a guy.
Okay.
So within your gender, hugging between friends is okay. Hugging between friends outside of your gender, that's when the numbers go down. Hugging strangers, also no. Unless it's a foreigner that just comes up to them and is like super friendly, then sometimes they might just get swept off their feet and they do that. But generally, hugging is a difficult one. So, and then the kiss on the cheek, like we have it in France and other places, is pretty much a no.
Yeah, stay away.
Only the most adventurous of Japanese young people on the streets of Harajuku are willing to just have a kiss on their cheek, generally. And then again, only within your gender. So randomly don't go up to people of the opposite gender and try and hug them.
That would be something. I've never attempted a cheek with a Japanese person. I imagine that would be just Panicsville.
A lot of Japanese people have said that. There's a whole video on Ask Japanese, shameless plug, about can you do that with Japanese people, and we just released a new one about that as well. So let the Japanese people tell you themselves. But general greeting is, instead of all the hugging and kissing, the general Japanese greeting is bowing. Exactly.
Must bow.
And there's types of bowing.
There's different degrees of
It's
bowing.
not the normal bow wow.
levels.
It's not the bowy bow.
You got the white belt.
There's a lot of different belts in the bowing.
Yep, it's not just one thing. So if you're just seeing one of your mates, and you can bow, just pop it down a little 15 degrees. Hey,
you're just like, oh, what's up?
What's going on? Yeah.
It's supposed to break eye contact, by the way. A lot of Westerners do this thing where they bow and they still look up.
I got in trouble for that in my first year here because in Taekwondo we would bow when you'd look at the opponent, yeah?
Yeah.
And so when I started wrestling, I was first doing this Taekwondo gimmick, and that was something that was written on the internet, is why doesn't he look down when he bows?
Oh, you have to look down. All right. Yeah. A lot of foreigners get that wrong, and I sometimes still get that wrong. I'll be bowing and still looking into people's eyes, but it's not quite polite. But you can do that with mates.
It does, because as Westerners, we kind of have this idea of eye contact is considered a sign of confidence and politeness. So therefore, I would do the same.
Eye contact is supposed to be a good thing.
Bow, but
that's a very interesting one. Sometimes eye contact in Japan is seen as almost impolite. Some people are too shy to do it. But if you go to a very posh department store, I went there once and the guy was like he was trying to be polite and he was not looking to my eye while he was trying to explain to me where to go. And I found that with my Western culture very disrespectful. I'm like, why is he not looking at me? But I got to explain to me later saying, no, that is actually been being very polite. You don't really look into people's eyes like that. So that was a cultural little thing that got me there too. So bowing and eye contact. Break eye contact, ideally, if you can.
Bow number 2, a bit deeper. You're going down for your 30 degree bow.
30 degree bow.
Hey, this is a bit of a
That's like the salaryman in Japan, like businessman, or if you bow to your superior.
It's a bit more serious at this level, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
someone who's higher than you on the hierarchy, respecting them, acknowledging the fact they're higher than you on the hierarchy.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Also, you bow a little bit deeper. And then we have the final one.
The saikere. All right, the super bow. This is the whole 90 degrees. This is the really you put your foot in it. This is your apology bow.
You want to apologize.
This is like saying, by the way, this is the single greatest translation I've ever read in my life. Yes. So this is like you've really done something wrong. And this bow, it means I dare not even fathom how to repay you for your... Oh, sorry, this is a thank you. This is not a forgiveness. This one's a thank you.
Yeah, there's a thank you.
It can be a thank you. This one's a thank you, but this translation I have here. I dare not even fathom how to repay for your gracious patronage. Not only myself, but my entire bloodline will be indebted to you for 1,000 million billion generations. You are like the god incarnate.
That's the kind of bow you get if you go to a high-class store and you buy something at the door. They will give you the item that you purchased, and they will give you that type of bow.
This is the single greatest translation I've ever read in my life. Whoever wrote this translation is a genius.
It is beautiful. It is.
That's what it's like. And if someone apologizes to you for something that they perceive that they slighted you, it really is like, generations of my family will not be able to make up for this horrible grievance I have bestowed upon you.
And you don't actually go like bow, 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 bow. You go down to a certain level and then you hold it.
You just stay there.
Yeah, you stay there. And the longer you hold it, the better. And you're still holding it. And you're like, man, some people do that sometimes at the elevator. And if you're in the elevator, please push that door closing button, because they'll still be holding that bow. And you're like, elevator goes, please close. This is so awkward.
At the end of meetings and so forth, everyone from the company comes to the corridor, they stand there bowing like this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
I've gotten to the habit of doing that now.
Yeah, I started doing that too. You kind of bow until the elevator door closes. It's a sign of respect.
Sometimes I do it in Australia, and everyone's like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm
like,
oh, what am I? Yeah.
A similar thing I started doing is like on the phone. When you're like, oh, thank you, or something, I started bowing on the phone. No one can see me. They can't see me. This is just silly when I'm doing it now. You can tell if we lived in Japan for too long now.
I need to let you know a big old important one as well. When you are speaking, if you need someone to repeat themselves, if you don't hear them, Cathy, if I say something you need me to repeat myself in Japanese, what are you going to say?
Oh, that's a tricky one, because you don't say huh, because that gets you into so much trouble.
You definitely don't say ha!
Ladies and gentlemen. If you didn't understand someone, you're like, huh? You can't.
Very bad.
Very bad.
Just so we all understand, ha in Japanese means let's start a fight. I'm not joking.
It is very offensive.
In my first year here, I almost got in a street fight with some Yakuza thug guy because I didn't know this. Just to explain, in Hong Kong, if someone says something, you want them to repeat themselves, you specifically say, huh? Because if you say, pardon me, where it was my experience in Hong Kong, was people would assume I had not understood their Cantonese and they would switch to English, which is very frustrating when you're trying to learn the language, right? So then what everyone in Hong Kong does within one another is going, huh? So I got into the habit of saying, huh? So my first year here, where I'm in a skirt in public and some jacked up Yakuza guy behind me says something rude, I turn around going, huh?
That's like you asking for a fight. It's like it sounds like half maybe to you in your culture.
To him, it's like, what's that, punk? It's like, what's going on, punk? What's going on?
It's like you trying to pick a fight.
Just so I turn around with a big smile, and go, huh? His reaction was, huh? And he comes up and gets in my face, and I'm like, oh, this is surprising.
Oh, so, no. Yeah.
I got very close to a fist fight with some Yakuza guy, so that would have ended very badly.
No, yeah, you do the whole could you please repeat what you just said? I didn't quite understand you.
I played my Gaijin card hard that day. I acted like an idiot. Once I realized this was a serious situation, I acted like a moron.
So that's how you got out of it?
That's how I got out of it, yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, don't hurt people. It's a big thing. There are other things you can use to confirm or reaffirm in a conversation. If you like, in there is like a lot of
yeah,
like
you
a
must
lot
do that.
of confirmative words to make sure that the other one. Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of hi.
That's very polite. That means you're paying attention.
Yes. They're saying something and you have to hi it up. Also a lot of like, what? Like, you do have to kind of like, it's a lot of call and response there.
It's sometimes people are being polite and in just the basics of a conversation, they act like, they'll ask you where you're from, you say Australia, and they act like you said Mars. Like, They act like it's the most remarkable thing you've ever said.
Beautiful.
What did you have for lunch? Salad. What?
There's great reactions there. Great reactions.
It's very funny.
Yeah. Coming back to the business manners, since we had the bow earlier, a lot of business manners are depending on who has the higgest hierarchy, which is generally the older they are and the more male they are. Let's be honest. Usually, the person with the highest hierarchy in the room will generally be the oldest person who's male. Is generally the highest hierarchy person.
We should talk about the, what's it called? The
Kamiza. The seat of God, Kamiza, in a room is pretty much the room that is the furthest away from the door.
The seat.
The furthest away from the door. We can kind of see the door, and it's the least kind of commotion around.
Yeah.
So in this room, for example, Ladybeard is sitting right at the end of the table.
And the door's over
Literally,
there.
the door is over there where you
can't
guys
walk
are.
this way. This is
you
door
can't
and
walk
wall.
directly towards
Have to go around
Ladybeard. You'd
this way.
have to go all the way around here. And Ladybeard is sitting now
the
currently
god
in
chair.
the god chair.
So it's the most important, the most highest hierarchical spot in the room.
Especially in restaurants, the person with the lowest hierarchy will sit closest to the door so they can take the orders, they can give the orders, they can dish out the items. They're busy. The person near the door is the busiest. They have to do a lot of things for everyone on the table, while Ladybeard in the camisa is just going to sit there and just
Chilling.
wait to get served food or
That
all
role
that
is
stuff.
almost invariably the youngest / least experienced female.
Then he's sitting near the door doing the orders, female or male, depending on
The context and the environment.
context, yeah.
And they'll personally be pouring everyone drinks as well and bringing people things.
Yes, you
and,
have to look out. The youngest person in the room has to look out for everyone. Again, we're thinking of group harmony there, and they have to do the grind. They have to look, is everyone's glass filled? Does everyone have food? Has everyone been somehow satisfied? They're busy and they're usually near the door.
Yeah, they work hard. They don't
work
get to sit down and eat
hard.
very much. So.
And the whoever is sitting in the camisa has already done all of that for years and years and years,
Yeah,
and now they're
exactly
like, haha, now
Now they
I
get
am
to chill
king, and now I'm gonna do the thing, and yeah.
It's real. So in pro wrestling shows, So when you're doing a big show and you have like kind of high status outside your company wrestlers coming in to do the show, you'll get to the locker room early in the day, and everyone's only using half the locker room. And if you go into the empty spaces, you'll get told, no, don't sit there. And you get crowded to sit right next to people. And you think to yourself, why aren't we using all this space? Then later, the highest status wrestler comes in hours after everybody else. And then everyone will make these two lines, which the star will walk between whilst everybody bows to him and thanks him for coming and introduce themselves. And he'll just walk through just going, just ignoring everyone while he goes to his huge clear space and sit there like a Roman emperor with people bringing him things and whatnot. Yeah, it's remarkable.
Yeah, especially I think in the entertainment industry, some of those rules that seem like bizarre to a lot of Westerners, those rules are very still ingrained in the entertainment industry.
And isn't it interesting because
Rules
in
of
the
power.
Western world, if someone in status behaved like that, everyone would get on Twitter and talk nonsense about him.
They got an attitude,
We'd
like
get him
out
cancelled.
of here. Yeah.
Thinks
You
he's
get
a
them
rock
cancelled
star.
like nothing.
Yeah, get him cancelled and that.
You get people cancelled like crazy. It is interesting because the person with the highest hierarchy in the room gets off with a lot of things, can do a lot of things, but also some things will absolutely not be forgiven.
Oh, yeah?
That
Such
would
as?
be in the Western world, like, who cares about it?
Such as?
Like, someone cheating on their wife. No one cares about it. They all cheat with each other. Like, if you think of celebs, they slept with that and then they got divorced and then now it's someone else. People will talk about it, but it won't ruin their career that they had an affair or something. But in Japan, if someone has an affair or something, that's the end of a career. If you're a woman, that's the end of the career.
Is that right?
For guys, it continues, but it's the Becky situation.
The Becky situation. Yeah, what happened? I can't
Becky,
remember.
Oh, man. Becky, it's a long story. It's a tin of worms there, to be honest. Becky was one of the few Western talents on Japanese TV. She is half British and half Japanese, and there was a gentleman who apparently was married, and they started apparently seeing each other. We don't know what happened there. We don't know whether he said, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to split up with my wife in about 3 weeks' time, and then we can be together." We don't know what happened there. Anyways, it just came out that they were seeing each other, and they tried to cancel that girl. They tried to threaten that girl, and apparently the wife has a right to sue her or to officially there are different rights to the wives in Japan, but for the other woman. So. And then Japan would split into people who were actually we shouldn't kill off Becky off the internet, and the majority was no, she's a witch. How dare she? That's a tin of worms you might not want to touch into.
If you cheat on your spouse in Japan, just so that you know, your spouse can divorce you, has the right to sue you, and has the right to sue the party with whom you cheated on your spouse. Sue them.
But again, in Western culture. If you've seen all the celebs doing things with that and that person, people will talk about it. It will be in some trashy magazines. That is, they're still on the media. Well, that's a very different thing again. Of like, anyways, the other cultural things are very different in
Show
Japan.
business is a whole new thing.
Show business is a whole new thing. Generally,
also,
the person who's the oldest in any kind of environment, the person who's the oldest and who's doing it for the longest is the person that you kind of need to please.
But they're also expected to pay for everything.
Oh, yes. That's the other thing, because they're already the highest in hierarchy, which means they earn the most.
Yeah, right.
So one of the things they will be doing probably is like pay the meal or the majority of the price of the meal. Or what they sometimes do, if people come up to them with like, hey, can you give me some advice on my job? They might give you some advice on your job, what you could do.
They might give you some advice.
They
have the option
advice
to say no.
about like, they have the option to say I'm busy, I guess, or generally that kind of stuff. But lots of those very, very strict rules are only if you're working in the entertainment industry, so you probably never have to really care about that because there's a wonderful thing called the Gaijin card.
But I'm certain every industry has its own quirks, and for the whole society, the whole thing's high context communication all the time. So you will have the experience when there's some kind of situation when you do something and everyone's like, and then when you're alone with someone, with one of your friends afterwards, they tell you you screwed up big time. And you're like, what are you talking about?
There's a couple of things you won't know about, like, for example, like, I remember it when I messed up. And it was a situation. There was a person who was, we were three talent girls sitting there on a chair. Our manager was sitting between us, and then on the other side was like I don't know, he was a director or someone, and the manager was trying to introduce us to him, so maybe we'll get a job through that somehow in media. No one of us did, but we were all sitting there, and he had his legs crossed, and I realized, in Western countries, you're supposed to cross your legs. As a woman especially, it's better to sit with your legs crossed, that kind of stuff. And so I was like, maybe I should cross my legs because I'm wearing a skirt. It's good manners in the West. And afterwards I got hellfire from my manager because in Japan it is seen as rude to cross your legs. The person with the highest hierarchy, him, who was crossing his legs, he can do it, you can't do it. Is literally what I've been told. He can do it, you cannot do it.
Yeah, I've done the same thing.
So I did the wrong, So there's a
also because I was wearing a skirt and I thought that crossing my legs was the most polite thing to do.
Yeah, I thought that would be, but apparently we were totally wrong. Very wrong. There's a lot of unwritten rules, but mostly a lot of them in the entertainment industry. But
I'm pretty sure in every industry as well. Listen, if you come to Japan, you're going to cock up. So just, get used to apologizing for that. There's no way you can really know until you screw it up. That's how you'll learn. You'll screw it up, you'll get told. And just over time, you got to figure it out.
Hopefully, you'll have Japanese people with you who will actually tell you what you did wrong, because otherwise you're just going to continue to do wrong. There's a lot of people who were, for example, who thought they had a great date, and they didn't really read the room properly, and the girl never calls them back, and they're like, I don't understand why she never called me back. It's because you really put your foot into it the entire time. There's a lot of things. A lot of guys, for example, seem like the more pressure they put on a girl to like do what they want her to do. That's a good thing because she's just indecisive. She doesn't quite know what she wants. So, I'm going to try and like push her to do what I want. That's not how it is. Like we mentioned this before in the podcast. Can we do the and the
Oh yeah, please.
We mentioned it before, but hey, hey girl, you wanna go to that restaurant date place? I'm really terrible at chatting people. Hey, you wanna go to the restaurant date place? She doesn't want to go.
Don't want to go.
That was terrible. I was really bad. But there's she will say yes, but that's not a yes.
I also didn't realize I was being her. I thought you were going to do her as well.
Should we do this the other way around? Let's do the other way around. Do patterns, okay?
Hey.
One is the positive and one is the negative one.
Hey, so what are you thinking about next Friday? You and me, we head all down to the old Lovers Rock for a little bit of a 1, 2, 3.
ちょっと難しいかな.
It
might be a bit difficult. Means no.
When she says that, don't keep pushing. That's your cue to get out of
let
there.
Let it be.
Lovers Rock is what I said. Let's head down to Lovers Rock. That's that's not a high context way to approach that situation
not at all. That was way too direct. Again, don't be direct. Don't be direct.
Yeah, don't be direct.
And you have to play the long game.
That's really what this episode comes down to. Don't be direct with your communication.
Don't be direct. And also, mind who is the person with the highest hierarchy in the room. You need to kind of gently, I think this was somewhere, it was like, wait, hold on, I wrote this down somewhere. Hold on. I took a little note here. How do you deal with superiors, important people, or older people? And I just pretty much wrote, well, you gotta respect, sometimes serve, and kind of pamper them a little bit. There's a lot of pampering going on.
Kiss their ass
no.
and laugh when they treat you horribly.
Really?
Yeah. It's show business, big time, right?
I mean, I had this one situation that was happening behind me on the plane that literally it made me go fuming. There was this person in higher hierarchy, who was sitting behind me and he kept kicking my seat. And after a while, I was like... And I could hear the two younger ones next to him were like, oh, boss, shacho, like, oh, maybe, and he was already drunk on the plane. And I was just like, look, I was trying to say it very carefully in Japanese. I'm like, hey, could you, like, not do that? It's very uncomfortable. He's like, oh, is this uncomfortable? Or is that uncomfortable?
Really?
Like, yeah, that kind of, like, I was just like... And you could tell that both of his superiors, the younger ones, they still had to butter him up and not tell him that he's doing anything wrong.
Really?
Yeah, kind of thing.
So he was just actively being a douche.
Yeah.
Wow,
and I was
that's
just like,
pretty aggressive.
I don't have to respect you, though, because you're not in my circle. You're not my superior. So you can't act like that with me. You can act like that with your other people that work with you. But I'm a stranger and you're annoying me.
Oh, this person was a stranger. I was under the impression that you were working with this person.
No, I wasn't even working with them and they had that attitude. So there's a lot of situations I've had before when I was just like, that's the only thing that sometimes makes me a bit sad is I know they have to butter up their superior, but sometimes when it starts affecting people around them, like if their superior happens to really misbehave and starts bothering other people around them, that's, I think, when it doesn't hurt to say, let's not do that, let's do something else, that kind of like...
In Australia, if you behave like that, you're risking getting punched in the face.
Yeah, I mean, because strangers might not be buttering you up that much. I had literally some things where I'm just like, yeah, you can still criticize your superior, if they're doing things that they're not supposed to be, you can tell
You've said that to people. You've said you can criticize him.
No, I didn't say that because they're strangers. But, you think that you're like, come on. You don't have to do absolutely everything. Also, if your boss is already behaving very, very badly, how are you getting treated?
That's right.
I hope you're not getting treated in a bad way at your job.
Let's wrap this bad boy
Let's
up.
wrap this bad boy up.
Thank you all for paying attention to yet another installment of Cat with Beard.
Well, just we went into some really deep areas there.
But it's important because there's no way to know until you either mess it up or someone tells you.
Yes. That's that, but again, you can play the Gaijin card. There's a wonderful thing called the Gaijin card and Gaijin Smash.
Important. Gaijin Smash?
Gaijin Smash.
What's that?
Is when you know you're actually doing something wrong, but you're doing it anyways.
Oh.
Because you know you can get away with it because you are a foreigner.
I've never heard that before. Gaijin Smash.
Gaijin Smash.
Oh,
Gaijin Smash it.
Wow, really? Smash?
I think a lot of British people do Gaijin Smash when the traffic light is red and they cross it anyways. Jaywalking.
But that's just clearly illegal.
That is jaywalking.
That's not a gaijin. In fact, you're just breaking the law. That's not
that's
an unwritten law. That's a written law. That's Gaijin Smash.
Well, give me an example of something where a foreigner has done something knowing it's kind of actually grey in Japan, but they kind of done it anyways.
For me, things like at metal shows, a lot of the shows here are quite well organized, as in the fandom is well organized, and there's a hierarchy within the fans, and it's a whole thing of a jig. And the foreigner will come in, and you'll be able to observe this. You just go, skirt! You head into the pit and start throwing windmills and knocking people out anyway, and you ruin the entire thing for everyone. No one's going to tell you, but, you won't be welcome again.
Oh, but that's when you ruin it. You should ideally, if you Gaijin Smash it, you shouldn't totally ruin it.
Yeah. If you're going to Gaijin Smash it, be prepared to be, expelled from the group, I would say.
Some Gaijin Smashes, just some Japanese people know, okay, they didn't know better. There's a lot of okay, they didn't know better.
Because sometimes
but ideally,
Gaijin
you shouldn't
Smash,
use the Gaijin Smash card for too often.
Gaijin Smash your way out of a problem with the cops. Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you Gaijin smashed your way out of the Yakuza situation. By
I did Gaijin smash my way out.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea.
Kept smiling and acting like a moron, and finally he figured out that.
And he let you off because a Japanese person, he wouldn't have let you off.
See you later.
He wanted to pick a fight. You said hot to him. He won't let that go. So there are a couple of things sometimes when you're lucky and you can kind of get off the hook a little bit easier, but don't play that card for too often because especially if you're planning on living in Japan, you can't play that card all the time. It won't work. Right.
Thank you for watching.
Try and read The Room.
You know where you shouldn't read The Room? In the comments section. Put a lot of direct comments about your feedback on the show right in there.
Yes.
And we'll answer your questions and things next time.
Yeah, put some direct comments in there. We're waiting for your very, very direct comments. Our socials are in the description of this podcast and the description of the YouTubes as well. We're looking forward to your comments.
And we'll see you next time on another riveting installment of
Cat with
Beard. Bye-bye.
Tschüss.